All thoughts in this review are based on a single theatrical viewing and thus are subject to change at a later date. This review will contain full spoilers for the film, consider yourself warned, and as this is an opinion-based piece, your satisfaction in watching the video is not guaranteed. So first of all, the whole Disney Princess portion of the film is getting a video or potentially a series of videos all its own because there is a lot to unpack there that I have strong opinions on. As a quick overview, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be based on the trailer. I love that they had the original voice actors doing their characters, the way they come together at the end to help Ralph is fun, and I love the way their musical themes weave in and out of each other's. But the whole does everyone assume that all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up thing, and the subversion attempt going on with that final scene, oh, we are going to have words. So many words. Because I do not get this idea that Disney seems to have of marketing something for profit that you also seem to actively disdain. Although the cast member joke was hilarious and the Stan Lee cameo heartwarming. Now, with that out of the way, let's move on to the film as a whole. And as a whole, hooray! This actually fulfills my view of what a good sequel should be by expanding the world, story, and characters beyond the first film in a way that feels natural. There are bumps along the way, sure, but more on that later. In terms of expanding the world, they literally do that by having almost the entire film take place within the internet. And with the new setting, there are some great designs for it. I love the way they travel around, I love the pop-up ads and the hearts, the anthropomorphized search bar, the design for each prominent website building, and the things from a bygone age like the GeoCities sign in the dump was great. I like that contrast of the arcade's daily rhythm with the always-on status of the internet world. And with that contrast, we come to the expanding of the characters with Ralph and Vanellope, who 6 years after the events of the first film are starting to look at the world very differently. I like that Ralph has reached a really contented spot in his life. After the events of Wreck-It Ralph, he's in a place where he has respect from the Nicelanders and Felix. He's learned to recognize that his job as the villain of his game doesn't define who he is, and he really enjoys having this tight friendship with Vanellope that was born out of that trial. To me, he represents the emotional fulfillment of the happily ever after narrative. After all their struggle and strife, the character has come to a place where they won't face significant hardship, and that's satisfying. Whereas Vanellope has the more practical, reality-based view of, hooray, life goal achieved! Now what do I do? In terms of story, it fumbles this idea of Vanellope and her desire to join the slaughter race game. I get the idea of her wanting to be in the game, because it has variety and it's not just the same track over and over and over, and of being in a place where there are drivers on her skill level and even beyond it. Shank is awesome in every respect, by the way, and I love that to see a short subject about her and her crew in the game a la the Toy Story shorts. What I don't get is how Ralph being clinging and overbearing ties into that. It just comes off as a manufactured problem so we can have the everybody breaks up and is mad at each other in the third act cliché. Sure, Ralph doesn't want Vanellope in Slaughter Race or out advertising his videos, but there's a real safety concern there. They are out of their games and could die permanently if they aren't careful, and Vanellope really isn't one for caution. The only time I really recall him being clinging about her as a friend is the whole scene with the comments section, and that seemed to be slotted in there purely to achieve this responsive him overreacting, because everything else in the film he does for her. He makes a new track to spice up Sugar Rush for her. Sure, he should have done it when the arcade was closed, but it's the thought that counts. He goes on eBoy to get the racing wheel to fix the game after that mistake. He makes idiotic videos to get enough hearts to pay for it. And what's his thanks for all that? Getting ghosted by Vanellope because all she cares about is herself. I mean, there's a half apology when they're racing to the antivirus gate. But with Ralph having to talk to the copies of himself down as the climax, we're clearly supposed to see Ralph as the problem party here because he needs to learn to let go. And I don't really see that, at least not entirely. I have the same problem with the first film, in fact, where Ralph has to apologize for breaking Vanellope's card, even though at the time he had a perfectly valid reason for doing that. He thought he was protecting everyone in the game, including Vanellope, and that's never acknowledged by anyone. I just think there could have been more to that third act and wish the film had focused a bit more on Vanellope's flaws and growth, rather than just Ralph's again. Also, I wish there had been some focus on the arcade as well, rather than having it just drop off the face of the earth once Ralph and Vanellope get to the internet. They literally say this takes place over 24 hours, and no one cares that Ralph is out of his game again for that long. There's no discussion of what Vanellope leaving Sugar Rush means for her game. A simple line about it simply rebooting from Litwick would have been enough. You could even have had Vanellope say that her leaving her world would mean Players would have to challenge themselves with the other racer's abilities to win rather than just using her glitch and tie it back in with Shank's earlier speech. Also, the idea of a princess being a ruler and dealing with the lives and concerns of her subjects is something that's not gotten a whole lot of focus by a lot of the other Disney princesses, so more subversion there would have been welcome. Still, in a world where remakes, sequels, and prequels are the norm, this was one of the good ones. The visuals were great, the animation was on point, I'd love the expansion of the world from the arcade, the characters that inhabit that world, and for the most part, the way the old characters interact with that new world. While I certainly have issues with the final act of the film, I still liked it enough to recommend checking it out if you haven't already. And those were my thoughts on Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Wrecks the Internet. Yes, it should have been called that. I don't care how many trailer things you put in the way trying to subvert it, your name of the film should have been slightly different. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this film or have any disagreements with it and would like to talk more, the comments are open. Thanks so much for watching again, and I'll see you all in the next video.